Hey guys, it's Karenology. This one is pure chaos. You have to hear how it all went down.
You know what they say about coming home to trouble? Well, let me tell you something. Sometimes trouble doesn't knock on your door. Sometimes it sets up camp on your front porch and calls the cops on you. I'm David Morgan, 62 years old, been living in the same house for 15 years, and I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at me. Boy, was I wrong. Picture this. I'm pulling into my driveway after visiting Mary's grave. That's my late wife, been gone 3 years now. And there's this woman sitting on my porch steps like she owns the place. Blonde, maybe 48, built like someone who's been stress eating for a decade. Next to her sits this skinny kid, maybe 10 years old, with eyes too old for his face. The woman's clutching some papers in her hands, crying like someone just told her Christmas was canceled forever. The moment I step out of my truck, she jumps up like a jack-in-the-box. "Finally, you're here!" she shouts, waving those papers at me like a battle flag. "I'm Karen Miller, and this is my house. My grandfather left it to me, and you're living here illegally." The kid, turns out to be her son Timmy, starts snapping pictures of my house with his phone, like he's documenting a crime scene. Now, I've dealt with my share of crazy in the army, but this was something else entirely. I'm standing there in my own driveway, looking at this woman who's telling me I'm trespassing on my own property. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice level the way they taught us in the service, "I think there might be some confusion here. This is my house. Has been for 15 years. But Karen Miller wasn't hearing any of it. She whips out her phone and dials 911 right there in front of me. "Yes, police? I need officers at 247 Maple Street immediately. There's an illegal squatter refusing to leave my property." The way she said it, you'd think I was some vagrant who'd broken in and made myself comfortable. While we're waiting for the police, little Timmy keeps circling my house like a real estate appraiser, taking pictures of everything. The garden Mary planted, the oak tree where I built that tire swing years ago, hoping for grandkids that never came. Even the mailbox with Morgan painted on it in neat block letters. The whole scene felt like something out of a fever dream. Let me back up and tell you how this mess really started, because nothing in life happens in a vacuum, does it? 2 weeks earlier, I'd gotten this strange phone call, male voice, older, shaky. "Is this David Morgan?" he asked. When I said yes, there was this long pause. "You probably don't remember me, but my name's George Miller. You fired me from the base about 20 years ago." Honestly, I didn't remember him. 20 years in the Army, you deal with a lot of personnel issues. Theft, misconduct, failure to follow orders. It all blurs together after a while. But this George Miller, he remembered me all right. "I just wanted you to know," he said, his voice getting weaker. "I'm dying, liver cancer, and I forgave you a long time ago for what happened. I know you were just doing your job." I tried to ask him more about it, but he'd already hung up. Seemed like a decent enough gesture from someone trying to make peace before checking out. I figured that was the end of it. Shows you how much I know about the ripple effects of decisions you make in uniform. So there I am, 2 weeks later, with police cars pulling up to my house and this Karen Miller claiming ownership of everything I'd worked for. Officer Rodriguez steps out first. I knew him from the diner downtown. Good kid, always respectful to his elders. Behind him comes his partner, younger guy I hadn't met. "What seems to be the problem here?" Rodriguez asks, looking between me and the weeping blonde on my porch. Karen immediately launches into her story. Her grandfather George Miller had owned this house, she claims. He'd been forced to sell it to me while suffering from dementia, and she just discovered this real will hidden in his belongings after he died 2 weeks ago. She waves those papers again. Fancy letterhead, official-looking seals, the whole 9 yards. I pull out my property deed, bought and paid for, all legal and proper. But Karen's not backing down. "He was sick," she wails. "He didn't know what he was doing when he signed those papers. This house has been in our family for generations." Now here's where it gets interesting. Rodriguez examines both sets of documents, and I can see him trying to work out this legal puzzle that's way above his pay grade. "Look, folks," he finally says, "this appears to be a civil matter. We can't just evict someone based on disputed paperwork. You'll need to work this out through the courts. But Karen Miller has other plans. As the police are getting ready to leave, she plants herself firmly on my porch steps and announces, "Fine, then we'll wait right here until the courts decide. This is our family property, and I'm not leaving." Little Timmy settles down beside her like they're planning to homestead. That's when it hits me. This isn't just about property. There's something deeper going on here, something personal. The way she looks at me, it's not just anger, it's pure hatred, the kind that's been simmering for years. After the police leave, I try reasoning with her. "Mrs. Miller, I understand you're upset, but sitting on my porch isn't going to solve anything. Maybe we can talk this through like adults." She looks at me with eyes that could melt steel. "Talk? You destroyed my family, David Morgan. My grandfather never got over losing this house. He started drinking after you, after what you did to him on that base. Lost everything, his job, his reputation, his self-respect. This house was all we had left of him, and you took that too." Suddenly, that phone call from 2 weeks ago makes more sense. George Miller. Now I remember. Caught him selling ammunition to some local gun shop, skimming supplies for extra cash. Standard court-martial, dishonorable discharge. Just another case file to me, but apparently it destroyed his life. I head inside through my back door, feeling like a stranger in my own home. From my kitchen window, I can see Karen and Timmy setting up what looks like a permanent camp on my front porch. She's got blankets, snacks, even a thermos of coffee. This woman came prepared for a siege. That night, I sit at my kitchen table with Mary's photograph, trying to make sense of it all. "Mary, honey," I whisper to her picture, "I know you always said my past would catch up with me someday. But did it have to be like this? The house feels too quiet, too empty, with those two camped outside like some kind of protest movement." Around midnight, I hear voices on the porch. Timmy's asking his mother why they can't just go home. "Because this is our home, baby," Karen tells him. "Your great-grandfather built his life here, and that man in there stole it from us. We're going to get it back, no matter what it takes." But then I hear something else. Karen crying, trying to muffle the sound so her son won't hear. Real tears, not the theatrical ones she'd put on for the police. Between sobs, she's whispering something about eviction notices and bills they can't pay. This isn't just about revenge or family honor. This woman is desperate, fighting for survival. The next morning, I wake up to find them still there, but now they've got company. 3 or 4 other people, older folks who look like they could be relatives. Karen set up what she's calling a memorial vigil for her deceased grandfather, complete with flowers and candles arranged around my front steps. One of the visitors, a gray-haired woman who must be Karen's aunt, approaches my front door. "Mr. Morgan," she says politely but firmly, "I don't know if you remember my brother George, but he was a good man who made one mistake. This house meant everything to him. It's where he brought his bride, where he raised his children. When you had him arrested, it broke something in him that never healed." I want to explain that I was just following orders, that stealing military property is a serious crime, that I didn't have a choice. But looking at these people, Karen's desperate eyes, Timmy's confused face, the aunt's quiet dignity, I realized that my reasons don't matter to them. What matters is that their family was shattered, and I was the hammer that did the shattering. By evening, the memorial vigil has turned into a full-scale family reunion. Cars lined up down the street, kids running around my yard, adults sharing stories about Grandpa George and the good old days when the Millers lived in their house. My neighbors are starting to stare, whispering among themselves, trying to figure out what kind of man I must be to have stolen a house from a grieving family. That's when young Timmy approaches my back door while I'm taking out the trash. He looks around to make sure his mother can't see him, then steps closer. "Mister," he says quietly, "I don't think my mom is telling the truth about that will. I heard her crying on the phone about money, about us maybe having to live in the car. She keeps saying if we don't get this house, we'll have nowhere to go." The kid's got honest eyes, the kind that haven't learned to lie yet. Timmy, I asked gently, did your great-grandfather ever talk to you about this house? He shakes his head. Grandpa George was always sad, but he never talked about houses or wills or anything. Mom only started talking about this place after he died. She found some old photos of him standing in front of your house, and she got this idea. He trails off, looking scared that he's said too much. What idea, son? That maybe if she pretended hard enough, it would become true, like wishing on a star, but with lawyers and papers instead. The kid's wisdom cuts right through me. His mother isn't just a scammer, she's a desperate woman, spinning of fairy tales to keep her family from falling apart. As I watch him walk back to his mother, I realize I'm facing something more complicated than a simple property dispute. This is about guilt and grief, about the unintended consequences of decisions made decades ago, about a family that's been broken and is trying to piece itself back together with lies and hope. Standing there in my backyard, surrounded by the garden Mary and I planted together, I make a decision that surprises even me. I'm not going to fight Karen Miller with lawyers and court orders. I'm not going to call the police again or have them forcibly removed. Instead, I'm going to give her exactly what she thinks she wants. And in doing so, I'm going to teach both of us something about the real cost of revenge and redemption. Because sometimes, the only way to win a war is to surrender the battle and change the entire game. Funny how a man can feel like a guest in his own life. 2 days after that so-called memorial vigil, my porch looked like a carnival ground gone sour. Wax from burned-out candles on the steps, paper cups rolling in the wind, a sagging banner that read, "Justice for George." I'd slept maybe 3 hours, most of them sitting up in my recliner with a Springfield tucked under a blanket. Old habits die hard. By dawn, I'd had enough staring at shadows, so I drove to Dottie's Diner on Main, the one place in town where the coffee still tastes like 1978, and nobody minds if you nurse a cup till sunrise. The bell over the door gave its tired squeak, and the smell of bacon slapped me awake. Dottie herself, silver hair piled high like whipped cream, looked up from the grill. "Morning, Colonel," she called me that, since she'd learned I'd once commanded something bigger than a lawnmower. "Rough night?" "Rough decade," I answered, sliding into the booth that let me watch the door. A habit, not a paranoia, though lately the difference blurred. Before I could doctor my coffee, the diner's TV, always tuned to the local channel, flashed a headline. "Veteran accused of stealing home from grieving family." My face, tired eyes, 3-day stubble filled the screen. The footage was Karen's porch vigil, edited for maximum pity. A voiceover claimed I'd tricked an elderly, confused war hero out of his ancestral land. Dottie's spatula froze mid-flip. "David, is that real?" Her whisper felt like a pin through my lung. I shook my head, but the damage was done. The couple at the counter leaned away like bad smell travels on lies. That, right there, was my first taste of Karen's psychological war. A breakfast ambush on community trust. I paid for coffee I hadn't touched and walked out to the sound of silence louder than any accusation. Halfway home, the second strike hit. My truck dashboard lit up, engine hot, shut down immediately. Steam hissed from under the hood. I coasted onto the gravel shoulder beside Miller's Parts and Service. Ironic, right? Popped the hood, and there it was. Radiator hose sliced clean, coolant bleeding out like green milk. Someone had used a box cutter. The edges were too neat for wear and tear. While I stared, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Deputy Sloan leaned out. "Morning, Mr. Morgan. Got some papers for you." He handed me a yellow envelope stamped County Tax Assessor. Inside, immediate property reevaluation. Notice my place classified as a heritage site under dispute. Assessment frozen, but taxes tripled until ownership clarified. Economic chokehold, neat and legal. I'd seen scorched earth tactics overseas. Funny to meet them wrapped in county stationery. By the time a tow truck hauled my Ford home, a white city van idled at the curb. 2 inspectors in hard hats taped a bright orange poster to my front door. "Unsafe structure. condemned pending review. Karen stood beside them, arms folded, a self-satisfied smile playing on her lips like a cat that learned to hum. She saw me limp up the drive, grease on my hands, and spoke loud enough for the neighbors pruning roses across the street. "House of cards, Mr. Morgan. You remove one rotten piece, the whole thing falls." The inspector cited electrical irregularities reported by a concerned citizen. Interesting, since she was the one who'd cut my main breaker that first night. Bureaucratic terror and safety orange ink. And here came the focal point scene, the moment a lifetime of restraint buckled like cheap plywood. I demanded a supervisor, flashed 15 years of utility receipts, even pulled up photos of last year's certified wiring upgrade. They shrugged. "Procedure, sir. If you have complaints, file them downtown." Karen filmed the entire exchange on her phone. Each refusal, each clenched jaw, was another drop of acid dissolving the idea that authority might help me. When the inspectors drove away, my property labeled dangerous, Karen called after them, "Thank you, gentlemen. We'll keep it safe." She had the gall to wave a little American flag, the kind kids get on parade day. I wanted to yank that flag from her hand and remind her what men like me bled for. But Timmy stepped between us, eyes wide. "Please don't fight," he whispered. Something in his voice, quivering yet steady, pulled the plug on my anger like water dousing coals. Karen barked at him to get back on the porch, but he stood frozen, torn between loyalty and truth. That hesitation, one heartbeat, was the sound of a child starting to question everything. That night the storm rolled in, a July tantrum with wind that howled through broken screens. I paced the dark halls, flashlight sweeping over photos, Mary in Yosemite, the platoon lined up in desert tan, framed lives now threatened by orange paper and public scorn. Rain hammered the roof like enemy drums. Around midnight, a transformer blew somewhere down the street. Boom, blue flash, then blackness. I smelled ozone and wet pine. The power outage wasn't Karen's doing, but it was the universe piling weight on shoulders already bowed. Candlelight can shrink a man's world to the radius of a flicker. Sitting at the kitchen table, I felt the house breathe, old beams creaking, water running in gutters, the faint drip-drip where the roof still waited for next week's repair that might never come. I pulled Mary's picture toward the flame. "Darling," I muttered, "they're squeezing me buried alive style. Air first, then light, then dignity. Should I walk away, sell the scraps and let ghosts duke it out?" My voice cracked on that last question. A colonel considering retreat. Who would have thought? At dawn, I woke to the metallic clank of a mailbox slamming. Through rain-streaked glass, I saw Timmy dart back to the porch. In the box, a plastic bag shielding a folded note. "Mr. Morgan," it read in a shaky kid's hand. "Mom's going to City Hall today. She says she'll make them foreclose you. She's scared of the bank men. I think she's wrong. I'm sorry she hurts you." Beside the words was a crude pencil drawing, my house with two stick figures smiling under the oak tree. One labeled me, the other you. That slip of paper was a fuse burning toward the powder of my conscience. For a second, I saw things through Timmy's eyes. A mother drowning in debt, grasping at the only float she can imagine. A boy caught in undertow, reaching for any hand that feels steady. The war story shifted. Karen wasn't my sole enemy, fear was. And fear speaks bureaucrat better than any lawyer. I needed intel, real intel, not rumors spinning on diner TVs. I called Walter Radar Jenkins, the comms genius from my old unit, now running a humble cell phone repair stall inside the rundown strip mall. Unexpected location, A4. Radar owed me his life after that night convoy got ambushed outside Fallujah. His wife still sends me Christmas cookies shaped like little radios. I told him I needed ears, not guns. Within an hour, he'd loaned me a handheld broadband scanner and set up a dummy Wi-Fi node disguised as free neighborhood Wi-Fi. If Karen or her newfound allies sent emails or files near my place, Radar's trap would copy the traffic. Legal? Maybe not entirely, but war seldom waits for rulebooks. While Radar soldered antennas, a call came from my bank. Automated voice. Unusual activity flagged. debit card frozen pending investigation of fraudulent transfers. Economic strike number 2. Karen had somehow convinced them my recent purchases were identity theft. My cash flow gone, truck in the shop, house condemned, checkmate in 3 bureaucratic moves. My chest tightened, a flutter, then a spear of pain down the left arm. For a heartbeat, I thought Mary was calling me home. I braced against the counter, breathing slow, counting 1 Mississippi, 2. Pain subsided, but the message was clear: hurry or the war ends without me. Evening brought the town's annual summer jamboree, force majeure C4. Usually I avoided crowds, but tonight it served a purpose. Music, funnel cakes, people drunk on nostalgia, that's where reputations live or die. I walked the midway, nodding at old acquaintances who now answered with uneasy smiles. Over by the ring toss booth, Karen held court with a local blogger, dramatizing our home-stealing saga for his cell phone camera. She pointed at me, crocodile tears glittering. There he is, shameless after wrecking my family. The blogger swung his lens, carnival lights flashed across my face like interrogation lamps. I could have ducked, but I stepped closer and offered my hand. "Ma'am, the good people deserve both sides, don't you think?" She flinched at my calm. That tiny recoil, psychological warfare meets judo, told viewers something words couldn't. 10 minutes later, a sudden pop of fireworks signaled the surprise the Chamber of Commerce paid for. Multicolored sparks rained over the fairgrounds, visual spectacle overshadowing our little drama. Perfect cover for the last act of Part 2. Radar, somewhere in the crowd, texted one word: hooked. Karen's phone had latched onto our fake Wi-Fi, and every file she sent, bank forms, inspection requests, drafts of sob story press releases, now sat on a secure drive in Radar's van. Back home after midnight, when carrying leftover popcorn smell, I reviewed the captured files on an old laptop. One email thread froze my blood. Karen to Mr. Harlan, Collections Division. Regarding demolition clause, once property is condemned, outstanding liens transfer to federal relief, correct? Your fee is contingent on foreclosure sale. Another message mentioned a payday loan shark, interest rates north of 40%. Karen wasn't aiming for justice. She was leveraging my home as collateral in a gamble to erase her debts. Grandpa's honor was window dressing. Money was the engine. That revelation should have satisfied my appetite for righteous anger, but instead it clawed at my conscience. I pictured Timmy's drawing again. The kid didn't care about liens or foreclosure. He cared about a safe bed and a backyard to call his own. I, on the other hand, cared about Mary's roses and the oak swing, waiting for laughter it never heard. 2 desires, 1 plot of land. Just before dawn, with rain clouds drifting away and cicadas tuning up, I stood barefoot on the porch Karen once occupied. Air smelled of wet soil and unanswered prayers. I realized the battlefield had changed shape, no longer a siege, but a mirror. Karen fought bankruptcy. I fought ghosts. She deployed rumors, inspectors, and banks. I would answer with something older, quieter, and sharper, patience wrapped in strategy. Not legal papers, not fists. Something that would break her siege without breaking the boy caught in the middle. Inside, I opened my father's cedar chest, the one that traveled from Korea to our attic. Beneath medals and service flags lay my old field journal, blank pages after page 37, back when bullets erased the luxury of writing. I tore out a sheet, grabbed a fountain pen that still smelled of ink and time. Under the dim hallway bulb, I began drafting a plan not for revenge, but for realignment, a way to turn Karen's own hunger against her while giving Timmy the stability neither of us could buy in court. The essence, offer her victory so genuine she'd choke on it. 3 lines in, the pen ran dry. Cheap symbolism, maybe, but it felt like Mary tapping my shoulder. Careful, David. Wars won with kindness still draw blood. I answered the unseen voice aloud. Well, sweetheart, sometimes the only way to stop a flood is to open a different gate. Outside, the first light of morning painted the condemned sign gold, like sunrise couldn't read warnings. I took a deep breath, tasted hope mixed with dirt, and whispered to the empty yard, Game on, Karen. Enjoy your lead, because the comeback starts now. Sunrise found my lawn glowing red and blue, not from patriotic bunting, but from the strobes on 2 county cruisers and a bank-owned tow truck. The deputy read the eviction notice as though it tasted of rust. Final foreclosure sale scheduled for noon. Personal belongings to be removed under supervision. Karen stood nearby in a tidy blazer she couldn't quite afford, hair sprayed into a helmet of resolve. Timmy clutched her hand. The boy's knuckles were white as chalk dust. Wind rattled the condemn sign against the siding with a hollow clack, clack, clack. Like a countdown, nobody could stop. The deputy asked if I had any last objections. I did, but none that fit on his clipboard. Instead, I nodded, felt a slow thump in my chest, a warning drum, and said, "Just give me till 11. He shrugged. The law could wait 1 hour for a man to pack memories. Inside, the house smelled of lemon oil and old secrets. I walked room to room, tapping each wall the way a sailor pats a ship before scuttling it. Mary's rocking chair, the oak swing rope, the brass shell casing we'd used as a doorstop. They would not fit in boxes marked miscellaneous. When I reached the cedar chest, I slipped the folded plan into my pocket and dialed Walter Radar Jenkins. "Operation Last Post," I said. Time to play it loud. At 10:30 sharp, the first rumble shook Maple Street. Not sirens, not bulldozers, Harley engines, 12 of them. Veterans from my old unit wearing dress blues over road grime. Behind them rolled an olive drab deuce and a half with a wooden podium bolted to the flatbed. Folks stepped onto porches, drawn by the growl and the smell of exhaust mixed with hot July air. Karen's eyes widened, her hand tightened on Timmy's shoulder until he winced. The Harleys fanned out, engines idling like distant thunder. I climbed onto the truck bed. The podium faced my house, not the crowd. A sermon to walls rather than people. I tapped the mic radar rigged to portable speakers. Feedback squealed, then settled into a low hum, the kind that makes even birds hold breath. "Neighbors," I began, voice steady though my pulse skipped beats. "Today, I surrender this house." Gasps fluttered across the street. I own it, yes, on paper, but paper can burn, and hearts burn faster. 15 years ago, I bought these bricks from George Miller, a man I once court-martialed. My duty back then cost him dignity he never got back. For that part, I'm sorry. My apology is overdue and insufficient, so I'm adding interest. I produced a thick envelope, sealed with red wax. This, I declared, is my personal will. Effective immediately, the property known as 247 Maple transfers to Timothy Miller, my honorary grandson, upon his 18th birthday, conditioned on his completing a full course of music education, paid in advance by my pension. Until then, Karen Miller shall reside here as caretaker, rent-free, provided she maintains the house and garden in good repair. Should she fail, ownership reverts to the Veterans Scholarship Fund. Murmurs rose. Somebody dropped a coffee mug that shattered like distant gunfire. Karen blinked, caught between triumph and suspicion. I wasn't done. "Second item," I continued, drawing a breath that scraped lungs raw. "Every debt collector presently hounding the Millers will receive from me a certified letter offering settlement at 50 cents on the dollar. Acceptance voids their right to pursue the family further. Funds come from the sale of my Florida retirement lot. Never liked palm trees anyway." A low whistle cut the air. Generosity tastes sweet until you notice the hook. Hook indeed. I held up a third document, a single page laminated in plastic. "This isn't legal," I said, "but it's binding in ways the court can't measure. It's a promise that this house will serve as a place of music lessons for any child in town who can't afford them. Timmy, that means your friends too." The veterans behind me raised their right hands in silent salute. The gesture rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Karen stepped forward, voice quivering like a plucked string. "Why would you do this? You could crush us, make us leave. Why give it all away?" "Because," I answered, echo of Mary's calm in my throat. "Sometimes the only way to end a feud is to outgive the grievance. Take the gift, Karen, or refuse and explain to these witnesses Why a mother would deny her son a future carved in generosity. That was the moral trap. Category G, public forgiveness turned weapon. Pride battled pragmatism across her face. Pragmatism won by a nose. She reached for the envelope, then hesitated. What about the foreclosure? The bank owns this place in 2 hours. I smiled, signaled radar. From the 2.5 speakers burst a recorded phone call, distorted just enough to sound live. A banker's cheery tone. Miss Miller, as per our earlier discussion, we accept Mr. Morgan's cashier's check. The property is no longer under foreclosure. Have a pleasant day. Cheers erupted. Karen's knees nearly buckled. Radar had executed the payment at 9 a.m., siphoning my Florida land deposit. Technological diversion meets economic strike. Categories D plus B. But wars seldom end without fallout. I turned to the deputy, still clutching his eviction clipboard. Officer, kindly remove that condemn sign. Electrical irregularities resolved at 0600. See certified invoice from Jenkins & Co. He studied the paper, then nodded to a workman who yanked the orange notice free with a screech of nails, the sound image of bureaucratic terror dying. The crowd thought the play finished. I knew better. Final act required a unique twist. I walked to the ancient oak, tapped its trunk twice. 2 bikers produced shovels, pried up a loose flagstone, and lifted a small metal capsule. Mary and I had buried it years ago, saving it for grandkids we never met. I handed the capsule to Timmy. Inside, I told him softly, are stories, photos, and 1 blank journal. Fill it with your own music. Promise you'll write truth, not just tales. He nodded, tears catching sunlight like dew on steel. Heart hammering, I addressed the veterans. Brothers, my mission here is complete. The house has a new commander. I resigned to reserve status. Caretaker, first class. They laughed, a deep rumble of camaraderie, then mounted their bikes and roared off, leaving the smell of gasoline and grace. Karen stood motionless, envelope pressed to her chest. She tried to thank me, but words tangled. I spared her the struggle. Keep your dignity. Spend gratitude on the boy. Turning away, I felt the price tag of victory. The Florida sunsets. Mary and I planned to watch, traded for Midwestern winters and the echo of young piano scales. Good trade? Ask me in 10 years. As people dispersed, Timmy trotted over, holding the capsule like a sacred relic. He whispered, "Does this mean you're really my grandpa now?" I knelt, joints creaking louder than pride. "It means I'll be whatever you need. A coach, a gardener, maybe a grumpy old metronome ticking while you practice." The kid laughed, pure and ringing, a sound strong enough to suture old wounds. Late afternoon painted the porch in honey light. Karen approached, shoulders slumped not in defeat, but in relief. I expected resentment. Instead, she offered a tentative handshake. "We both lost something today," she said. "You lost your quiet. I lost my excuses. Maybe we can build something better on the rubble." I squeezed her hand, gentle, firm, no promises beyond effort. Dusk settled. Cicadas tuned their chorus. I sat on the steps where the vigil once mocked me. Wind rustled Mary's roses, carrying their scent like a whispered benediction. I spoke to the empty air. "Well, sweetheart, the flood's rerouted, the gates open. Hope it holds." Across the yard, Timmy placed the capsule beneath the oak and began to hum a tune I didn't recognize, fresh notes weaving through branches older than any feud. That melody, tentative yet stubborn, was the moral will I wanted to leave the world. When history hands you bitterness, answer with a harder, sweeter chord. And if tomorrow brings new storms, tax bills, gossip, repairs, I'll face them with soil under my nails and music in the halls. Because true ownership isn't ink on deeds. It's the courage to plant grace where resentment once grew, and to stay long enough to watch it bloom.